My name is Jason Solotkin. I have two children along with my wife Lori. We have a 5-year-old daughter Samantha and our son Jordan, who recently turned 3. And last summer of 2012 was quite a difficult one for our family. I'll never forget the phone call that came from my wife. Jordan was dropped off at preschool, and it was actually summer camp, and he was probably there for about a half an hour. I had just left the meeting, and my wife called me and told me that Jordan had a seizure, his first seizure, as it turns out. And obviously that's a moment that a parent will never forget. So I raced over to the camp, and obviously the ambulance was there, and they brought him to the local hospital. At that point he was coherent, and they did some tests. Everything came back negative, and basically they sent us on our way without any medication. The test came back, like I said, the MRI was negative. They did an EEG test on his brain for 30 minutes, didn't show anything. And obviously we start calling family and friends to find out what we can to get him in the best proper place in front of the right doctors so we can get a course of action to learn as much as we can and obviously see what we would have to do should it happen again. And thankfully, through friends, we were able to visit with Dr. Trevor Resnick here the next morning, believe it or not, which was in itself pretty astonishing that we were able to get in. And at that point, he told us what we had already heard, which was that basically there was a 50% chance that Jordan could have another seizure, and we'd have to wait and see that they really wouldn't do anything at this point and just hope that it was an isolated event. And that there would be no repeat occurrence. Unfortunately, about 10 days later, he had another. The big turning point was when our pediatrician was able to initiate a transfer from the local hospital to Miami Children's Hospital on a day after he was unfortunately suffering through seizures. The Miami Children's ambulance literally came up to our community and transported him down. And to say the very least, we're most fortunate that he ended up here at Miami Children's Hospital. That day, he had intractable seizures. And the ironic part was the doctors wanted to hook up the EEG monitor to his brain to get a good look at the brain waves. And the only way they could really see the activity was if he would have a seizure. Unfortunately, Jordan gave the doctors more than they needed that day. With a series of seizures which were very hard to control. Again, being under medication, causing an allergy, his entire body was covered with a horrific rash. So it was a combination of, you know, the shocking waves to the brain causing seizures, covered in a rash, head to toe. And we just wanted peace and quiet for Jordan. I'll never forget him being in the pediatric intensive care unit that day. And you have so many wonderful schools of doctors around you, every subspecialty you can imagine, asking the types of questions that we as parents couldn't even imagine to think of to ask the doctors. They're asking us. And the comparison between what the care was like here at Miami Children's Hospital versus your local hospital where you would otherwise have to rely on the care provided, there's really no comparison. And that day, had he not been here, I shudder to think what would have happened because, like I said, the combination of seizures and the rash led us to really make a decision where I had to defer to the head of the PICU unit, who basically said either we can start a new medication and it's going to take time to build up the level, or we're going to have to intubate him. Here was a word that was simply not a part of my vocabulary. And you know, your emotions are frayed to begin with, you're sleep deprived, you're searching for answers, and I literally said to the doctor, I have to trust you. All I can tell you is that my son needs to rest. You need to put his body at ease. And the decision was made to intubate him. It was, you know, very emotional for my whole family to see that happen to your son. But it turned out to be the right decision. His body came to rest, his mind came to rest, the seizures were curtailed, and his skin cleared up as well. Unfortunately, even though the next week or so brought peace to him, it was not the end of the road in terms of bringing his seizures under control, because we got him back home and the rash came back with that particular medication. I will never forget the next day that we ended up at Miami Children's Hospital. Was a very bad storm in the area. I think it was a tropical storm, and we were back in our hometown about an hour away from here, and Jordan was having seizures again on that Sunday afternoon, and we had to go back to the same local hospital, the only one that offered pediatrics in our community, and we had to wait until the Miami Children's ambulance could come and pick him up because they could not control the seizures. And he ended up in the emergency room that night. I followed the ambulance. It took me about 2 hours through maybe 60-mile-per-hour winds on the highway. Just to get down here in itself was very risky. He's having seizures in the ambulance. He's in the emergency room. And through the grace of God, the doctors here, because we didn't have answers for him, they tried a medication that controlled the seizures. And it's the same medication he's on to this day. And we haven't been back to the hospital since then. It's been about 5 months. The seizures have been under control. We've gotten our lives back. Jordan is back at school trying to catch up the time he's missed. And at this point, we just searched to see if there is a possible explanation for why the seizures took place, because right now, fortunately, all the tests have come back negative to rule out something that would, potentially cause a lot more anxiety and unrest that we currently have, but it still leaves us as a loss as to why our son has epilepsy. But I will say that if we were limited to the care simply of our local hospital, I probably wouldn't be able to sleep at night, and I don't know where we would be left. The combination of bringing him here the first time when they intubated him, and then the last time when the emergency room doctors found the right medication for him, quite possibly saved his life. So, we continue to remain under the care of the fabulous pediatric neurologists here at Miami Children's Hospital. Hopefully the science will find answers. We pray that he'll outgrow it. We know that that's quite often a situation that children are able to come through. And like I said, we have peace of mind that only an hour away from our home, we have a facility like this with the doctors on hand to bring you world-class care that you never know when you're going to need. So that's why I would say, if you're being pulled in many directions for dollars to donate, but anybody who's a parent or has a niece or a nephew or a friend with a child, the only thing I ever prayed for was healthy children. And you never know when that call comes, like I got that day that Jordan had his first seizure. But you want to know that you have the right type of doctors and facility nearby for when that phone call may come. You want to be prepared.